reflection for the passing of 4 individuals that we had. And since our last meeting, all have had activities with the town or with other groups. One is William Tuttle, and Wilbert Lincoln, Sandra Orslack, and Cynthia Baird. Jim Baird's wife passed away a couple weeks ago. And if we could just take a moment of silence and to reflect upon their contributions to the town and region. Okay, thank you. The first order of business is we have a public hearing regarding ambulance fees, and I'll read the public notice, and then we'll ask for Chief Rogowski to speak on the issue. Town of Barry, public hearing notice, EMS ambulance fees hearing. Take notice that the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, February 5th, 2018 at 6:35 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Henry Woods Building, 40 West Street, Barry, for the purpose of increasing fees associated with EMS ambulance billing. Persons wishing to comment may do so at that time. The board will also consider written comments received prior to the hearing. The meeting room is handicapped accessible. Persons requiring reasonable accommodation should contact the town administrator's office in advance, and that's for the Board of Selectmen, Faye Zakowski, administrative assistant. And we have with us Chief Rogowski, and if you'd like to come up, Chief, and take the hot seat that you've become accustomed to, I guess. Thank you.
So after speaking with our billing company, they've actually recommended that we increase our ambulance billing fees to be on par with that of the surrounding communities. Ours is pretty low, substantially compared to the other towns. So what I did is I got a list of all the ALS level services immediately, as close to Barry as possible. Hubbardston, Rutland, Paxton, Westminster, Holden, and Coastal's our billing company. They gave me 2 other of their clients within the central Mass area. They just wouldn't tell me who they were, just as a comparison. So I made a chart. As you can see, we're the lowest with the exception of Westminster. The way we do our ambulance billing, you'll see BLS, ALS1, and ALS2, depending on what we do for service. If it's a BLS call, just 2 EMT basics, we charge, it's an $800 fee. ALS1 is a paramedic. Once the paramedic gets in the back, the level of skills they do is more. The fee goes up. And then ALS2 is based on the amount of work that the paramedic does. And to get an ALS2 call, they have to give 3 different medications. So basically it's a CPR call or somebody not breathing to get ALS2. The way that we do the billing in Barry is they call it ancillary billing, and most towns are getting away from that and going to bundled. So ancillary is we charge the base rate, which you'll see on the left, and then if the paramedics use a cardiac monitor, they charge an extra $250, and IVs an extra $120, as you can see. The problem with that, and you would look at that and think, well, we're actually billing more in the long run than the other towns that do bundled, but a lot of insurance companies will only pay for 2 of the ancillaries. So either, if we could do 10 things on that list, they're only gonna pay for 2. If the insurance company feels that the skill wasn't necessary, medically necessary, they can opt not to pay. We run into that a lot with Section 12s, or sometimes people are having anxiety or panic attacks. Medically, they don't need oxygen. When we give them oxygen, it's more of a mental relief and it calms them down. Because medically, the oxygen isn't really doing anything, the insurance company can say, we're not gonna pay that extra $150 charge or the $125 charge. So what most communities are doing now is called bundle billing. If it's an ALS1 call, it's one rate. They don't charge the call and then for all the additional skills. They're assuming that if you're having a paramedic in the back, you're doing those extra skills like a cardiac monitor or an IV anyways, which for just about every paramedic call we do, the paramedic's putting them on a monitor, they're giving them an IV. So it just makes it easier to collect more from the insurance companies. Our mileage is $25 a mile, which is on top of our ambulance billing. And if you look, that's actually kind of low compared to most of the other communities. So if you, down at the bottom, I highlighted my proposal would be to go to bundled billing, like what the other communities do, where it's just one flat fee. If you call an ambulance and it's a basic ambulance, the charge is that X number of dollars, or whatever you wanna set. We don't charge extra for all the extra things that we may or may not do in the back. What I did is I took all those communities and I just took the average of what they were making, and I kind of worked that into what my proposal would be for an increase, based off Hubbardston, Rutland, Paxton, Westminster, Holden, and the two other clients, which are ALS level services, not BLS level. The only thing I would add is that we could still charge as an ancillary for an extra EMT. Some calls we have to have, an extra hand in the back, depending on the nature of the call. Whenever we have to train somebody, they have to do 10 calls in the back of the ambulance before they're allowed to ride on the ambulance alone. We have to pay their salary, that's an extra charge, so I figured that would be a fair ancillary bill to add, because, that is an extra expense. This doesn't, I've had a few questions about how this would affect people in town. Currently, 72% of the patients we transport in Barry are Medicaid, Medicare, or Mass Health. The state sets the rate for Medicaid, Medicare, Mass Health. We can charge whatever we want. We're only gonna collect, and I have the chart here if you're interested in seeing. So for instance, Medicaid's rate, Medicare's rate is $379 for a basic call. Doesn't matter what we charge, we're only gonna get $379. So this increase is really gonna just affect the private insurance, the Blue Cross, the Blue Shield, the Fallon. And again, it's just gonna put us in line with the other communities. So we have, and I talked to Faye, and we probably haven't had a rate increase since 2006.
I think so, that's what we would look back to.
So most of these other communities, I put down their last increase, which are all been pretty recent. I mean, expenses, ambulance supplies, wear and tear, tires, brakes on the ambulance, everything obviously increasing. So we need to, I believe, increase our rates to reflect the cost.
Okay.
How come you don't wanna bump mileage? I mean, everything else we're gonna be pretty close to the averages, but mileage was saying way below. You could bump to 30.
We could.
And still be 280 below the average.
We could. The thing with mileage is Medicare sets that rate, they pay $7 a mile. So like I said, 72% of what we do, we can increase the mileage. I mean, it looks like the average would be around
32.81 you have, so.
We can certainly increase the
'Cause
mileage.
even at 30, it's not, I mean, it's lower than most. So
Yeah.
if we're in it, I mean, if
The
you're gonna
the
raise
reason
them
the
all.
one reason the mileage is a little bit lower is because we transport further, so our bills are actually larger. So even though Holden's charging
That's what I was
46,
thinking.
they're only driving 10 miles to the hospital, where we're driving between 17 and 26.
Okay, so it would ramp it up too much if you had the.
So if we
You ramp
increase,
it
that's
up,
why
the
I.
bill gets,
Yeah, cause
Okay.
you look at Holden, even Paxton at $48 a mile. I mean, from Paxton to Worcester Hospitals is a pretty quick ride.
Yeah.
Where we're pretty much doubling to tripling the ride, so the bill is actually higher for us, even though we charge less money.
Alright, that
And
makes
again,
sense.
Medicare, 72% of what we're doing, Medicare, Medicaid, and Mass Health are setting the rate, the max we can bill anyways, and workman's comp.
And they won't pay the ancillary either, they just pay just a fee.
They just pay, and I have this here if you're, just for your own knowledge. This is the current 2017 Medicare, Medicaid rates. Of course, it's a state document, so it's kinda hard to understand. If you look at locality, we're locality 99. And you can see mileage, they pay $7.29, no matter what you charge. That's the max you can charge for a Medicare, Medicaid, Mass Health, or workman's comp patient. And then we do ALS, ALS2, and BLS. So you can see for a BLS call, the maximum we can get is $379. and was with Medicare and Medicaid, the Medicare, Medicaid, and Mass Health only pay 80% of that number. The patient or the patient's secondary insurance is responsible for the other 20%, except for Mass Health. Mass Health pays, and Workman's Comp pays 80%, and that's it. You cannot charge. So take 80% of $379, and that's what we're getting for 72% of our calls. So it may look like, you know, we're charging, but a majority of what we're doing is not.
What's a BLSN and ALSN, like a non-service or something?
Those are non-emergency, and those are for transport
transport.
ambulance. We don't
We
do
don't do
those, so
those
those
anyways.
don't apply to us. Those are for like MedStar, Vital, the private ambulance companies do those. Some fire departments do them as well if they have hospitals in their town, but we don't do that. We're not licensed for that. And then the Medicaid rate is underneath.
Okay. Now, do you actually need a vote from us on this, or can you
Yes.
just do
Nope.
this as strong chief?
Nope, I need these are my proposal, the highlighted numbers at the bottom. You feel free to change them if you feel they need to be changed, or if you vote to have them, then once it's an official vote, I just notify I'll write something up, give to the billing company, and they'll reflect that in there. And again, this all kinda started based on their recommendation that they were looking at our numbers and saying we're substantially lower. You can look at Hubbardston, they charge $3,100 for an ALS 2 call.
Mm-hmm.
It's about triple what we charge. They don't get it, all of it, obviously.
I'd make a motion to approve the recommendation to increase the rates as Chief Rogowski has provided.
A second.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous.
I have seen some things on the, probably on Facebook or something, people complaining about ambulance rates and how crazy they are, but, for people that are watching, to try to understand why the rates get where they are is staffing personnel and the ambulance and maintaining it and replacing it. Those costs, you know, are there year-round, whether we're transporting or not, so, the idea here is to set rates in a way that we're fully compensated for what we invest. It's not really a moneymaker here, this is trying to recover for the personnel and the equipment that we do put into it. For those who have seen those things online, I think there's something crazy about the numbers, it really isn't. That's it?
That easy.
Thanks for taking the time
All
to.
right, no problem.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Thanks for
Yeah, thank you for coming in.
You want that one? Look at those numbers.
Okay, and we have some minutes to approve.
Absolutely.
Minutes of June 14th and January 16th.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes from June 14th, meeting with Finance Committee in 2017, and the January 16th Board of Selectmen open minutes, but not the executive session till they're amended. My name's just in there as calling out of the meeting and seconding a motion to leave the meeting, but I left that executive session prior to.
It's just the
We-
last.
We agreed to adjourn from it, and once we went to executive session, which I was in the roll call to enter.
We're not approving any executive session minutes tonight.
No, he's speaking of the meeting minutes that talk about the roll call to go into executive session. He's saying specifically that one item, he wasn't involved in the roll call vote because he excused
Does it
himself.
state that he's there?
It states that I was there to call out of the meeting to adjourn, and that I seconded the motion to adjourn, but I was
Okay.
not there. So it's just that page regarding the executive session portion of it.
Seconded to enter. He's saying prior to actually entering that
Okay.
particular one, he actually just excused himself knowing the topic.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, motion made and
and I'd
You
approve.
can approve them and
Approve,
I'll
when
reprint
we
them for
amend that.
signature later,
Okay.
okay? I'll
Alright.
fix it right now.
I second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion that's made and seconded as noted with the changes. I'll call for a vote. Hearing no further discussion. None?
Aye.
In favor? Aye.
Pass that to Greg to sign. That's just the
Okay.
finance committee
Yep.
attendance.
Then can we have a section for public comments? Does anybody have anything they wish to bring up publicly to the board at this time? Just anything in general, and we have other issues on the agenda which you may you can probably speak to when we get to them. Okay. Hearing none, I'll move on to old business. Special event permit for Pursue Adventures. We dealt with this issue last week, and it was for up at the Carter Stevens Farm, dated. Did you have something you?
This
She's
is
the
Lauren's event.
requester.
What?
This is her event.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Just thought this seat looked better than the one back there.
Okay.
It is,
I mean, this
it's
is
actually
nice.
new, it's nice and comfy. It's better.
Okay.
Looks like they have their last sign-off approved.
This date of this event is at Carter Stevens Farm, dated, planned for the 24th. Maybe you could give us a quick synopsis of what you're planning and.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as last year, we ran a family day up there at the farm. It's all outdoors event. We set up an obstacle course for kids and families to do together. We're pairing it together with the farm on a February school vacation week. We provide the event, we provide the volunteers for parking. We had no altercations last year. Carter and Stevens and the Stone Cavalry will run as normally does. We have tents outside, no food vendors. Just a very nice, easy day of playing outside.
Okay. Board members, questions?
I'd make a motion to approve the event now that we have all the signatures we're looking for on the sheet.
I second that.
Okay. Any further discussion, questions, or comments? Do you have any questions for us?
No, unless you have something for me. Last year it went really great.
Okay.
And
Oh.
it says a quick,
Yeah, Kathy?
it's February 24th?
Yeah.
Look, it's a little cold. What do they do, just out of curiosity?
Dress warm?
Okay, but I mean, what's in the tents?
Nothing's in the tents. It's just a nice place for registration, for finishers, medals, things like that. The tents are there to break down the wind, but this is a come and go as you please event. This isn't an all-day event.
Okay, is it a races for the kids or?
It's not considered a race. We call it an event because there's no timing. We
Mhm.
do have a start line and a finish line. We do
Oh,
do
okay.
finishers medals. It's kind of, we've created an inclusive obstacle course where they're small and tall. So we try to get all kids of all ages to play
Oh,
along on
okay.
the same course. We do a shorter loop so that parents can kind of oversee it from a distance or go with it if they like.
Oh, so cool.
So, but we try to keep them moving, parking wise, especially in the winter, it's hard to park a lot of cars at once. So it's nice to offer them, we've broken it up into waves, starting at 10 a.m. and the last one's at 2:30. So you have people coming and going all day long. We did reschedule an event recently this year on, we were supposed to have a New Year's Day one, because of the bitter cold, we did reschedule. If that comes to play, we would put it back in front of the board as another event plan.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Let's see, we didn't vote on that yet.
No.
No. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. In favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Yep, if I can just have you guys sign the bottom of that.
Okay, something that the board had some interest in, the abandoned building, discussion is kind of ongoing related to a number of properties in town, and I guess you're in here to that. Why don't you come right up into the front?
The chief is with me also because the legislation regarding abandoned buildings is actually very cooperative between the fire
Okay.
department and the building department, so I asked them to
I was already here, so it was an
I
easy
need to
answer.
stay.
We have good
Um,
scheduling like that.
Okay, as you are aware, we had some discussion, the board, kind of a informal, quick discussion on certain properties, and I guess, we need to know what has to be done to put something into effect on some of these buildings, and what we can do under the law,
Okay.
what we can't do, and
So we put together a package for everyone. It's basically the first page, this is actually a copy for you.
Thank you.
And then, do you want to copy it or not?
Yeah, no, I'll.
The code is the only thing.
That's
Do you want
fine,
me
yeah.
to copy
That's
this? I can use mine if you need it.
That's okay.
I know what it says.
So the first page is basically, straight from the building code, the regulations regarding unsafe structures. You'll see that it does reference the fire department many times. It talks about, language, we can mark buildings that are unsafe. So that's page one, we'll just kind of go through it. Page two, because I did a lot of work with vacant and abandoned buildings when I was in Athol, I had a number of houses torn down that were abandoned, in poor condition. So our town council over there had put together this document, kind of what the process is if we wanna go through with demolition of some of these buildings. And then I brought, the 3 properties that I believe are in the worst condition, and I've highlighted, the tax dollars that are owed on these 3 properties because it's quite significant. It adds up to $91,000 in owed taxes, just in 3 properties alone that are, they're vacant, they appear to be abandoned, they're open to the weather, which is one of the key components for unsafe structures. The building code is very clear that it has to be vacant, abandoned, and open to the weather. That's something that's stressed. So that's the criteria that we're looking at when we go after these buildings. The problem is really plain and simple the money, because it's very expensive to have a building torn down. These properties that are in tax title, I thought would be a good place to start, because I've spoken with Jason Pimentel, and he would be willing to tear these buildings down. So if they're town-owned, if we can expedite the foreclosure process, then the town could tear them down without having to go through procurement. It all depends on where you want to go with it. This is just sort of some preliminary information that as Rob and I were talking today, he mentioned a couple other buildings that I wasn't aware of. So we look at it from different standpoints. I look at things that are structurally unsound. Fire department obviously looks at it from a standpoint of a fire hazard. So he had some buildings that had close exposures that were abandoned, that would be more of a priority for him, so.
With, say, what you stated, you've gone through your steps, you believe these are ones that probably should be demolished, removed, beyond repair even, like these are the ones, get rid of them, based on your best thoughts. I do understand there's certain mass laws about the steps you then take. What I don't understand is, are these, you have to take step 1, 2, 3, 4, or can you jump to step 3 if 1 and 2 are clearly not going to be effective? In other words, you can say, fix it, demolish it yourself, and then.
We have to go through the process, and as a matter of fact, we have to do a title search, send notice to all interested parties if we're gonna move forward with this, because even if they appear to be abandoned and we don't know who it is, there could be some next of kin that we're not aware of, that once we do the title search, we get that information, somebody may come forward because it's still private property. That's why these buildings that I brought as priorities are ones that could be gone after more quickly because they're in tax title. So once the town owns them, then we don't have to go through that process.
Okay. One question I have is, because you guys obviously have certain powers due to your positions and state law. And the select board technically has their own, under section 139, 1, 3, 4, whatever, which I think are pretty much like following the same process as you guys have defined in your process. But of course, if we're doing it, we're not necessarily doing it from your point of view, if you understand what I mean. Like, it doesn't say that, we don't have to base it on the 3 conditions you kind of said. We just have to identify it as a nuisance that causes potential public hazard or other things, and
I know the boards of
I'm
selectmen.
just curious
can-
how that works.
Yeah, and I
from
don't
your
really know, to
perspective.
be honest with you. I know the boards of selectmen, there are 3 entities that can have buildings demolished, the building department, the board of health, and the board of selectmen. I'm only familiar with my process because this is the one that
Okay.
I've worked through, so.
I just didn't know
Our
if you had
attorney-
experience
I
where a
don't,
previous board had come to you and said, hey, this is our issue.
No, when I was in Athol, this was the route that we chose to take because it was the cleanest route for having a building demolished, so that's the one that we worked with.
Okay, and that, I do believe it does sound like it's the cleanest route, I was just, okay.
So then I guess what it comes down to is the funding, because even, I mean, for some of these buildings, you know, you can secure them by, there's standards, the US Fire Administration has guidelines for board up procedures. But again, it comes back to, we order someone to do it, and if they don't do it, or in some cases, there may not even be living owners, then the town has the obligation to follow through with that. So I'm happy to move forward with any of this process, but there needs to be funding for it, which, you know, I really don't have that in my budget. So if it's something that's a priority, then it's something I think that we need to look at, given that it's budget season.
So I guess the question I have is, say these 3 cases. Are you saying you've already confirmed with the treasurer that they're in tax title? Or
Yes,
just,
these,
okay.
I had these printed up today, up to date, from
Okay.
the tax collector's office.
So once they're in tax title, just so I better, these are real questions, so.
Mhm.
Does that mean we already have ownership of it, or it just
No.
means,
No, there's an attachment to it.
So it's the first step of going through the tax title foreclosure process. And so basically the treasurer has to then deem that going after that property through the full foreclosure process is gonna be fruitful. So, 'cause sometimes, you know, you'll have a land of very low value, we end up taking it, we're never gonna get anything from it, so it might just stay in tax title forever. But if we do go through the whole process, then we need to go through basically the court system, who's going to then, you know, notify the, you know, next of kin or anybody who has any interest in it. If there's no opposition, then they rule and they give it off to the town.
no?
But
do
it
you
is a
have to,
lengthy
like,
process.
buy it at a certain market rate when that happens, or is it?
No,
do you-
what happens is once it's deeded to the town by tax title, all of the existing taxes are wiped out. So
You lose
we'll
that
never,
potential
we'll-
income.
we'll never get that until
Property
we
in lieu of
sell the
taxes.
property.
Okay, oh, thank you, that helped clear some
But we
questions that
could
kept
demolish
circling
it,
in my
sell the
head.
empty property, sell it off as it is, and let someone else develop it. You could do what we want with it once we own it. That would be the whole point, but there's an expense to get to that point.
The town would have to auction it off.
To really
Right.
do this, the point of it isn't nearly as much the financial implications as the safety implications of, we have an abandoned building that we deem is actually getting to a point that either could cause the fire department issues if they have to respond to it, or just the general public if it's not a secure facility that someone could get in there and then they get hurt. I'm guessing that's usually when you say, okay, this is something where we should really look at getting this building removed, not because tax title versus not. Am I correct? That's usually the
Yeah,
impetus
that's
of this step?
Right.
Okay.
Our last 2 major fires were vacant houses.
Random person goes in, shelter from the wind, and then they do something to warm up, and all of a sudden,
For whatever reason,
Whatever-
kids
whatever
hanging
believe
out
it
or
or not.
people squatting.
We haven't proven anything, so.
And I've
Okay.
received a lot of complaints about these buildings in particular.
Well, the discussion started over my inquiries as the one next to the fire station. And I'm really frustrated on the lack of clarity on how that house got to be where it is. So if you could entertain me for a minute, when did you first start handling the inspections in Barry and why? Because we had George Ricker here, we had Harold and then George, and then Harold left. And did you come on when Harold left?
No, I came on, George was the inspector for a long time, and then, when George resigned last October, that's when I stepped in and started doing the inspections.
Okay, do you know what date George became licensed? As I understood, he wasn't licensed initially when he was an
George
inspector.
is licensed as a local inspector, but not as a building commissioner. So he held the position here as the local inspector, and I acted as the acting building commissioner for like 3 years. We would meet weekly and go over, you know, questions, concerns, issues that he brought to me. But
Okay.
he was certified, he was doing the job until last
As the
October.
inspector, but not the commissioner.
Correct.
And what's the difference in definition of those duties?
It's a level of certification.
Right, but what's the difference in the duties?
The duties
What,
are
when,
very
when you, when
similar.
you get the next certification to become commissioner as opposed to inspector, what's the change to responsibilities or abilities?
Basically, it's passing 3 more tests, so as long as the town has a commissioner, they can have a local inspector who can do all the inspections. He's capable.
You're still not getting my question. You make a good politician.
I mean, I guess, are we discussing vacant buildings, or are we discussing
When you're
certification?
an inspector,
Mhm.
you can do X, Y, Z. Once you become a
The
commission,
duty-
once
the
you
duties
become
are
a
the same.
once you become a commissioner, is there anything additional you can do as a commissioner?
The duties are the same. It's a level of certification.
Okay, so I'm not understanding why there would be another level if there's no change in
Well, every
ability
town
or.
has to have a commissioner and a local inspector, but the local inspector can do all the same inspections, has all the same functions as the building commissioner.
Then why does the town need to have both? Would be was what I'm driving at. Why
Well,
do
they
we?
really don't. They really only need to have a commissioner.
Okay, why must one be a commissioner and not just an inspector? We're gonna get to this sooner or later.
I mean, it's the state law says that every town has to have a building commissioner.
So the building commissioner is the one that's ultimately responsible for all the properties then? Okay, that's what I'm driving at here. What date was it that you were here to do the commissioner services because George was an inspector but not a commissioner?
I don't know the exact date that I started that, but it was
Okay.
a few years. prior.
When did that end? When did George get his commissioner finally?
George didn't get his commissioner, he left.
Okay.
He went to work.
And we've gone through this whole thing because my frustration was when I inquired about that property next to the fire station. Your statements were very clear that this had nothing to do with you, this was George's thing. But in fact, since you were our commissioner, you were responsible for that house ultimately. So when I asked how this house got to be in the condition it's in, as we watched them tear off the roof, tear out the load-bearing wall in the basement, butcher the structure inside, this was going on ultimately under your commission, okay? This is why I asked about it, and I thought I would have got a better response about it,
But
because
I never had a conversation with you about the property. I really wish that you would have come to me and spoken to me directly about it, because I didn't.
I'd asked Andrew to inquire about it, and I'd asked the secretary to inquire about it, and then when the response back from both of them that you didn't see the same concerns of the building that I did, that's when the board met. And have you looked at that building
I
from
have
even the
looked at the
outside?
building, and I spoke with the owner of the building. They came out the next day and did what they could to secure it. It was for sale, I believe it's been sold. The owner indicated to me that they bought it, they had every intention of fixing the building, but then her sister was diagnosed with cancer. So they had been caretaking for her sister, and all of their funding and time had gone into that. So consequently, they put the house on the market, and it's up to date on taxes, it's listed for sale, it's secure. It's not, I realize that it's not in good condition, but it's not a building that I feel that I can legally take action on.
Okay. Were my concerns about the structure and the safety of the structure forwarded to you, or did you not understand what I had concerns with about the structure?
I knew that you had concerns about the structure, but I believe that maybe something was lost in translation. That's something that we
Okay.
should have had a direct conversation about, not
Okay,
via
if
other
you were to look at that from the exterior, you can see there's an L section that faces towards the fire department parking lot where they have vaulted the roof. They've risen the roof, it's not properly anchored, it's not a new wall, they've just added on top of the old wall. It's 2x4s, they are probably 2 foot on center, they're at a 2 pitch or a 3 pitch. The new ridge pole they designed for those ties into an inappropriate place inside where they've reconfigured the inside structure of that. The first guy that was doing this stuff, I had the opportunity to go look at with him before he passed away, and I was dumbfounded by the things he'd done to the structure inside. He's ruined the whole ridge pole setup for the whole roof line. If you look at the building, you can see it's listing about 3 degrees towards the fire station, the whole structure. And then if you look at the back of the structure, you can see there's a cinder block wall apparently built on top of the foundation. It's neither plumb nor straight or level. It's completely all over the place because those blocks were thrown in place literally just to kind of block off that access to the cellar. They in fact took the load-bearing wall of that house that was attached to the foundation out. They stuck a beam underneath the floorboards and put some 6x6 posts under it to kind of jack it up, assumed to be temporary while they rebuilt the load-bearing wall. But that's not the case. That house and the whole back side of that house is supported by a beam propped up under the floorboards with stilts at an angle going back down outward towards the foundation. The cinder blocks are not attached, they're not anchored, the house is not anchored to it. The whole rear of that house is not anchored, is not properly supported, and it's been listing further since they did this work. And this is my concerns. This house is not something that would probably take a heavy snow load, and luckily we haven't had one yet. The roofs are improperly done inside, and this is all done under the open permit. Why this work continued, there's a window on the side that you can see they've reframed the window. You can see it's a brand new framing. I think the permit was out for windows and a roof, not reframing anything. And there's been a lot of reframing done, and I don't understand why that work was done so obviously to the outside that this work was being done and it wasn't caught. And why it was allowed to continue.
There's been no work done there since I've been working here full-time.
That's
A year.
not
Little
true.
over a year,
The people who bought it went back and worked on it as well for a while. Were there a couple times working on the old, well, I'd say without a permit.
witnessed that.
You never witnessed that, but the fact is they were. I understand you didn't see that. My concern is that all this construction and reconstruction of the structure, of the support structures for the roof and the main foundational support of this building have been altered while it was under building permit, under your commission and under Mr. Ricker, who was supposed to be viewing it. And it is in a dangerous state right now. And I'm frustrated that I can't get someone to go look at that, to examine that. Now, it shouldn't be difficult, I wouldn't think, to get inside to see because there's been an open permit. You can see these changes from the outside that have no permit authorization for it.
I haven't seen anything happen since I've been the building inspector here.
You can see changes to the structure that were done without a permit. They're visible and there's no permit to trace those changes.
I mean, I guess, so what would you like me to do? What's your proposal? Because we can, you know.
What I'm
it's all
saying is,
wrong,
I am
but-
sure there's a legal way, and I would not have, I would prefer not to be the one to have to start thumbing through the legal books to find out how, but when you can see an obvious structural change in a house. For example, if you saw someone in the center of town tear off their roof and start building a second floor, you can see something's going on. You can say cease and desist, and at that point, you must have also some right to inspect the safety or security of that structure because of those changes. And since those changes have occurred, and they are obvious to anyone that has anything to do with construction, these are obvious alterations. There must be some way to inspect that for safety, because I believe it's more urgent than you're understanding. The
I
entire
don't view it the same way that you
load-bearing.
do, but if you'd like me to reach back out to the owner and see if we can go and move forward with that, then I certainly can.
You
I
don't,
mean, I thought
you
that
don't
the
view
buildings
the
that were-
entire load-bearing wall in the rear of that house being removed as an issue and that the house sits on stilts. You don't, that doesn't concern
When I
you.
looked at the house, I didn't see, I mean, why don't you and I meet there and take a look at it together so we make sure we're looking at the same things? Because when I went and walked around the building, I
Absolutely.
didn't see the same things that you saw. So I think that would be best.
Okay, we will do that.
When would you like to do it? When are you available?
Either do it early some morning or any afternoon, later in the afternoon, or weekend.
How early, how late?
I don't care how early. 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning.
I usually come in for 8, I could meet you Wednesday
We could,
morning at 8 o'clock.
we could do it at 8 o'clock, certainly. That'd be
Put it on my
great.
calendar.
I'd appreciate that.
Would you like me to reach out to the owner and see if we can get into the building?
If they would be open to that, that'd be a great idea. Give you a good chance to look at what's going on with that roof structure. It's been a couple of years since I saw this and the guy had done it. But I seem to recall that when you put that flat roof in, he's stuck like a support post under the ridge pole that's randomly in the middle of the ceiling downstairs, and it had been causing the ceiling downstairs to dip visibly. You could see at the time probably an inch or an inch and a half drop in the structure since he'd assembled it where the structures, the members are already pulling apart and dipping. It looked as though I think he'd cut into the old section of the roof to try to tie this back in and took away some of the actual rafters that were supporting the old section.
Okay, I'll contact
But
the owner and see if we can get inside.
The
I don't
bigger
know-
concern is that load-bearing wall, because that's on the fire station side. There's the station, there's apparatus, and how badly this building is leaning is, we could bring a bubble level and put one on it and see, but it's visible with the naked eye. And
I know that it's leaning, but I
and
mean,
I
I
bel-
don't think, to me, it doesn't look like it's an immediate danger of collapse.
I'm happy we haven't had a good heavy 2 feet of snow like we
Well, you
have in
said it's
years
been like that
past.
for a few years, and we've gone through a
It's,
couple
it's,
of bad winters.
Well,
so it
no,
hasn't
we've
gone
never
anywhere.
had a big buildup on it since they did it. That was opened up really last winter was the first concern
We'll meet there
for it.
Wednesday, I'll contact the owner
Okay.
and see if we can get inside, and did you wanna do anything with any of these other ones, or were you only concerned with that property?
Oh, I think, personally, I think we should look into all these properties, and if we can go through tax title and look into getting things like that. As Chief said, we've had structure fires in these, and we had a partial collapse in one of those last year, that was vacant like this, that people were getting into. We absolutely need to start cleaning up the dangerous ones, that people are getting into as well.
Okay.
Do we need to be looking at each property that's involved in tax title?
We can. I mean, I was looking for, these are the properties that I've received complaints on, so I feel
Right.
like, you know.
How far along are they in tax
The
title, do
only
you
thing
know?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just suggest that we just do and I'm sure you've kind of already done this, but just get a formal response from the treasurer about the pros and cons financially. And
Right.
then,
Yeah, she wasn't in
and-
today, so.
Right,
I'll
and
speak to her tomorrow.
then we'll just get the, I guess, estimated cost for foreclosure steps or whatever that is you spoke
Mhm.
of, and see if it fits within the, kind of the tax title money we threw at her.
Yeah, there's.
And her budget
I'm thinking
or
that
not?
These might be properties that she had already, you know, she's already really going after, so the money that was appropriate.
So
at
it may
special town
line
meeting.
up together anyway, I guess
Right.
is what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
the,
so it might be within budget to start that process.
And it may be wiser, depending on the condition of these, I mean, without knowing if they're dilapidated outside, they're open, it doesn't mean they're structurally ruined. They may be repairable, in my opinion. The one next to the fire station, not repairable.
See, I think the one next to the fire station is repairable. I think that 2 out of 3 of these are beyond repair. One of them may be repairable, but I haven't been inside.
Couple of the back trees go through the roofs.
Yeah.
And sections of roof that are collapsed, I mean, this is.
But
The only-
we may be better auctioning it where someone might purchase it that wants to level it and build a house versus trying to put the expense into demolition it and then auction off an empty lot, which would be, I mean, obviously we wouldn't want the land, I wouldn't think.
No, my bigger concern is with these things, anytime you end up taking property, you're taking everything that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know lead paint, oil spills in the basement, you don't know anything else you've got. So even though Jason could go out there with the equipment and knock it down and throw it in a dumpster, he may never be allowed to remove that dumpster from site until all the testing's done.
Well, we
And
have to have-
and that's what I mean, so that's the next step of the budgeting of having the proper testing done, the proper evaluation, so that may mean even though Jason can do it, all of a sudden now he can't, because he doesn't have the right certifications for the right remediation requirements. So I'm just saying, there's more to it than just, it's an old barn that's just wood, versus it's a house that someone lived in and who knows what they painted their walls with, or what they built it. So I'm just throwing it out, questions that I don't know.
Even, yeah.
Others may be more familiar with it, and that's why they're comfortable making those statements, and that's fine.
I think even with the DPW doing the work, you're probably still talking at least $15,000 per house to knock it down because of the abatement costs. You gotta do
Well,
that,
and-
you have to do that either way, and it's.
When they're in poor condition, if they're structurally unsound, we do the asbestos testing. If anything's contaminated, then we have to treat everything as it's contaminated because we can't do the
They
remediation of the asbestos.
assume everything.
Right, the lead is less of an issue. They can estimate it by weight and allow it to be torn and buried, but the asbestos is huge. You can't, there's no way around asbestos. Absolutely none. And if you can't go in and abate it, then you gotta do the whole thing.
So that's the part of the budget we need to figure out
Right.
that goes beyond the tax title process.
Right, the tax
And
title
How do we
process-
budget that and plan for it, even just the testing part, let alone then budgeting for the actual demo.
Yeah. 'Cause even if we did go through the tax title process, we could still go through the court system and get that. You know, basically, they would tell the town, yeah, you can go ahead and knock the building down, but the thing is, the town is still responsible for putting the money up to get that work done, and then has to place the lien on the property and eventually hope that
And-
it sells and you get the money back on the lien.
We can actually demolish them without going through the court system. That's something that the town can do on its own. If you
Yeah,
read the
just
thing from
read that,
Attorney
yeah.
Goldstein. So it does eliminate the court
Right.
process, but it's still it's the funding. And if we do that, if we don't own the property and we go through this, then we do have to go through procurement. You have to get bids. In pay prevailing wage, the cost definitely goes up.
And asbestos would still be a stopper on it either way, because no matter which process you do, if there's asbestos,
Right.
that abatement cost, it will be astronomical. And that's likely to be a holdup for any of it, if there is asbestos. Some of these may not even have heat
These are
systems.
considerations, that's all.
Right.
Just so that, I do agree that
Tax title's progressing anyway, so we'll see where that winds up, and it may drive people out that want to, pay that off before that process is done anyways.
Okay.
But we
so
certainly need to get better
easily, I would
informed
just
on it.
suggest, let's start pursuing those numbers and then we can figure out how to fund it. I think it's the right steps.
Yeah, we'll have to do like an RFP and stuff like that. We're gonna do that, which I've got draft language on that. I didn't wanna dump a lot of paperwork on you anymore than I already did, but.
One step at a time.
Yeah, I had 9 or 10 buildings turned out when I was in Athol, so I'm very familiar with this process.
Just some of these obviously very unsafe, and as you said, we've had 2 structure fires and that type of thing, and a lot of potential for things to go south.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I believe as I read it, in what you provided, where it references MGL 143, sections 6 through 12.
Yeah.
Currently, actually, if you go to section 13 is where it allows us to ask you to go inspect the property, which gives you now that right. Where you just driving around saying, that kind of looks funny, but unless we ask you, you can't necessarily then.
No, I can. I absolutely can.
Well, you can depending on.
I have to.
But I mean, if we ask you, then
Yeah, that's another
That's all
way to
I'm
do it.
saying
Yeah,
is-
exactly. No, in the
so-
same way, like if Rob sees one, we're legally obligated
Right.
to notify each other of any building that we see.
all
If
three
it's
of
in
us
plain
can
view-
bring it to attention to then
Exactly,
work at it. So
exactly.
that's generally what we ended up doing.
Mhm.
That's all. So I just wanted to bring it up because a lot of times people don't understand how, this speaks to a lot about after you identify an issue, how do you deal with it?
Exactly.
But it doesn't speak a lot about what gives you the right to identify the issue. A drive-by? Because without
no,
a
Master-
drive-by or a permit that allows you into the property,
Master General Law, Chapter 143, if it's in plain view, just like any,
So
you know,
the plain view
if it's
thing
plain
is
view,
what
if it's
gives
in
it
plain
to you.
view, then I have the authority to take action, yeah.
right, okay.
And these are all ones that are plainly visible, and another reason why these were primary concerns to me is because these are the gateways coming into town. So if you're coming into Barry from Route 2 and the first thing you see is a couple of these falling down buildings on the way into town, you're not really gonna say, gee, I think I'd like to put my business here.
All
you
3 of
know?
those are on 122, so.
Exactly.
it's different
Exactly, all three
size.
were
Right
right
next
on
to that
122.
house.
So, I mean,
Okay.
Okay, Bob, did you want to add anything?
No,
Okay,
the issues I've had, I've addressed it.
Okay.
Taken care of.
So
See
how,
you Wednesday
how
morning.
many, yes, how many have you had people secure and board up to this point?
Yellow House, the fire station house, they came out.
they did go out, yeah. 51 School Street was secured, they secured it the same day that I called them.
then the other ones that I've identified as hazards I'm concerned about that are vacant are secured, but nonetheless, they're still vacant.
Are those the ones that get like the red X on
The
them?
red X is basically just language for the fire department, so that,
Yeah,
they
they don't
know
enter.
that it's, yeah.
Do we
basically
have
structurally unsound.
properties like that in town marked currently?
We don't have any that are marked. I can have signs made up. I do have a price from a vendor that I could have that done.
Just
I've had it done in
curious.
other towns.
Just since we're thinking
It
of safety.
should be done. It
Mhm.
should be done because that's
But
like.
that's what the X is for.
It
is
varies tight up on the
Unsafe
call.
to enter, don't go in.
Right.
No, I
there's-
understand that. I was wondering if we had any currently.
I mean,
have
we don't.
any.
We probably should, but
I have some
not to that
signs
point.
in Hardwick that I could bring and just replace, you know,
Sure.
I have signs, so if we wanted to hang some up tomorrow, we could.
Mhm. Excellent.
There's some houses are vacant, but they're good, you know, just because nobody's living in them, they wouldn't need the sign.
Doesn't make them
Right.
abandoned, you mean,
Exactly.
and
Well,
unsafe.
it's, yeah, the difference
I mean,
between
there's a lot
unsafe
in there
versus
between-
still protecting property that can still be used if just kind of brought back to life and someone moves in.
Right, so people can certainly
Thus,
drain
just
the
vacant
water and
versus-
winterize the house and protect it. And it's not a hazard
Those would
and not
be-
dilapidated, but
Right.
those are all pretty clearly
Okay,
dilapidated.
thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time, appreciate it.
Okay. We have an update on recreational marijuana, I guess. And
Yeah,
is that-
so, I went to a, seminar put on by CMRPC, this last Friday that kind of went, over all the new regulations that are coming out, beginning, this July. There's really a lot of information all kind of packed into this. There's like 7 different categories of licenses that they're gonna have as part of these laws, and there's basically any way that the town is going to, if it wants to outright ban any portion of this, it needs to both approve it at town meeting and as on a townwide vote. So, you know, they're pretty clear on how they want, you know, they're pretty much making this almost like an incubator program for recreational marijuana in the state. They're really kind of being proponents of it. But there are a number of like zoning laws and local regulations that the town still adopt to locally regulate it without doing an outright ban. So I was gonna suggest that we try to coordinate a meeting with the planning board to kind of hash out what direction the town wants to go now that they've had their public hearing sessions, and now kind of do the one-on-one with the board to figure out, you know, how it wants to proceed. But I did provide a thing from KP Law that's available that kind of goes through the entire new section of law and how it affects local municipalities.
I'll read you some of that, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And an update on the senior work-off regs.
they're
You
the same
guys,
as-
I think we left off that you guys were gonna look through them.
Yeah.
And then
I don't know if you had a chance.
There's just those 2 updates that Matt had provided
Yep.
that I didn't know if we wanted to
Okay.
take any action on as well.
What is the pleasure of the board on this?
Were those made? Was that
I
revised?
don't believe that they're on this version that was.
No, they're not.
No, so if you want, we can push that to the next meeting.
Yeah.
until there's a-
Okay.
Do you guys have any more comments? Do you wanna discuss those changes you wanna make, Matt, before we?
The only one was, after the last meeting, you mentioned you thought there was a cap in a bylaw, and I couldn't find a bylaw with a cap on the senior work-off program.
It's the cap per person, but you want the reference to the cap of the overall number of people
Mhm.
allowed in the program, so.
The amount, correct?
The total amount, which usually comes down to a number,
Right, so
but,
10, you know, like.
so if
The
10
board might
people
say-
means 15,000,
Right.
right.
So the board can annually vote 15, say $15,000 to be appropriated to the
Right.
senior work abatement program.
And that way, towards the following year, we better have
Mhm.
we know at least it won't be more than 15,000 that comes through abatements
Right.
to that tax year, so.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anywhere you would recommend putting that in here. But maybe that do a section F miscellaneous provisions under 4.
Right, I got you.
That might be the most logical place to put it.
Okay, so we'll take that up at the next meeting.
Yeah, if there were any other changes, we can just add that in as its own section.
Mm-hmm.
And then, maybe every January would be a good time for you guys to vote that, figure.
Yep.
That way it can go into the next
So
year's
just make a
budget.
section that says,
Annual
work
amount
off,
of
work off
to be-
cap to be,
Mhm.
work
Be
off
set
cap.
annually by the board of
Yeah,
selectmen.
we can work on the language.
Well, even if it didn't have a dollar amount there, if it just said the work off limit, the cap to be set annually by the Board of Selectmen. If,
Yeah.
without, that way, without,
I think you wanted the amount there, correct?
well, without putting a number in the, if you're gonna,
Um,
if you're gonna amend the bylaw, we'd have to keep amending the bylaw amount every time versus.
This isn't a bylaw,
I-
this is a regulation.
No, right,
But-
but it's like a policy, but yearly,
It has to be done.
the total cap for
Right, so we can,
participation,
right, but we're
is
saying we can
upon
make a
our-
line that says, total participation cap shall be set annually by the Board of Selectmen.
yeah, that simply.
So it's, that way, without putting a dollar sign in here that we'll have to
Right.
change in this document every so often.
Agreed.
The document can survive, but we'll still set the dollar amount annually. So
Exactly.
we'll kind of phrase it that
Yeah,
way.
we should probably actually vote that in December before we're bringing on the next round of candidates for the next year. So we can vote it in February this year, but we'll just have to kind of make it policy that each year in December, you're voting a cap number.
Okay, so we could say,
Understood.
each year, the Board of Selectmen shall, at a December meeting, at the first meeting in December, shall set a cap for the amount to be available in the work-off program.
Works
That
for
way-
me.
That way you have your section in there. It
Or
gives us
no
a
later
cap.
than the first meeting in December, the board is, so if we choose to
That,
do it
that-
November,
yeah, that'd be
whatever.
good. No later than the first meeting, we should address it and set the cap. Failure to adjust the cap should carry on the amount from the previous year. So if
That
we
works
choose,
for me.
so we
That
choose
way
not to
if
modify it. That
it
way,
slips or-
yeah, that way
yeah.
we're not left without it because we didn't set it, just to think ahead.
And I do like the idea, just so you know, the concept of a cap in dollars, not in participants,
Yes.
because some participants won't take the full 1,500. And if that means someone can come in later in the year knowing, more
Right.
participants could necessarily partake, that's all.
Right.
Okay. Snow and ice deficit.
Yep, so, surprise, surprise, we've gone over this, gone over the cap. We brought that up last week at the finance committee meeting. We're gonna try to do both, votes the same night, but unfortunately, we only have one board of selectmen member. But at this point, we are, over with both, the expense side and the overtime side. And-
The one that I
Yep.
provided is not the most
That's not the
current
one
one, this is
today.
the one we presented to the finance committee. Jean wasn't in today, so I wasn't able to get what the amounts were after last week's warrant.
Be able to print them up pretty.
The email she sent out with the budget reports from the pay warrant that she
Actually, yeah,
just
that would
did
have it.
shows.
You want to run the meeting for that? Be right back.
Sure.
Yeah, we can look that number up later though. We can look it up.
I'm there, now I'm just racing to that line. I'm probably racing right by it because I'm so good at identifying that.
I got it.
Ah,
What's the numbers?
Beat you. Alright, I'll let you catch up, man.
I'm sure they're
Oh,
different
there
after
it
today
is.
as well.
Yeah,
I'm
we're,
sorry.
we're 4,000 over in the overtime, part-time.
What's the full number for overtime, part-time?
The original number,
No, the number deficit right now,
we're,
4,000.
we're $4,033.45 in deficit. And the highway snow removal, which I guess is generally materials, is minus $24,322.16. That is as of February 2nd. on the date of the report.
I was gonna say they were treating last night in the overnight hours, so.
Right.
It's gonna be.
So,
Not necessarily materials may not change again, but at least the hour's gonna change.
I'm trying to remember, what
So
was
now-
our recommendation? We
It's
did
an
40 and
additional-
40?
Was it 40 and 40? I can look
It's
that,
40,
hold on.
40.
Or was it 40 in the
I think it was
overtime and we maybe went a little
50.
higher?
I thought we said up to, oh, you know what, it was, we brought the supplies up to 150.
Okay, so
And
129 to 150 won't work because we're already
We're already
past
halfway
that.
there. Well, we're already halfway to that next cap number.
Oh, right. We were at 104, 129 is the
looking at-
actual spend.
We're looking
not
at a
the-
significant storm
So it looks-
Wednesday.
Right.
So it
Um,
looks like we did
We're
45,000.
gonna take a big hit on that.
Additionally, 45,000 to snow and ice removal, and an additional 40,000 to snow overtime part-time.
Was that, we increased it by 40 or did we?
Increase,
Okay.
40 on,
I thought we brought the overtime
Up to 40.
again up to 40. So it's a difference of the 40 minus 23,651, the original number. Now I gotta do
17,349.
math. Is that an increase of 16,349? And then highway snow removal would be an increase of 45,000. It looks like
It would
the
be-
overtime might work for a little while, but the highway materials, that snow removal,
Yeah.
might run out in a week,
Yeah.
or not quite that long.
One delivery is like $30,000, so, for salt.
The only thing I can say, though, is the finance committee, if I'm correct, they already voted and approved that. It was
Mhm.
just then for us to follow up. So we can either revise the numbers and ask them to review it again Wednesday, or just approve what they already did, get that cleared out, and then review it again Wednesday
We might
with
as well
them
just-
jointly.
I mean, we might as well just approve just to get it going, but I mean, we're gonna have another finance committee meeting right around the corner before the next payroll warrant even comes out. Just
Because I think the
revise it at
only
that
thing
point.
I would want to consider is the actual highway snow removal line item for the materials. The other one, the
Mhm.
labor looks like I might hold for a little while,
Right.
if we get lucky.
Well, unfortunately, this next storm isn't looking too good on the timing, because it's starting in the middle of the day and.
Oh, right at the
By the-
meeting, we'll be looking
by
at
the
the snow,
time-
wondering, do we need any
Yeah.
money for snow
But
removal?
that's the thing, they're gonna have to treat,
It's a
it's
big
not
selling
like if
point.
it starts at 10 o'clock at night, they can kinda let it build in the off hours and you can go after it, they get 4 or 5 inches, they're gonna have to start, cause it's gonna be during the commute.
They'll be really starting right when they're getting out of work, so
Yeah.
I mean,
they'll be
and
hitting
they-
that overtime.
They may get it so far, I don't know if he does that, I mean, is it smart to keep plowing during the storm or let the snow fall and go after it again in the morning?
It all depends on how
And
it
just
comes
cycle it.
down.
Yeah, it's gonna hit the overtime, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I'd say we'll just do, stick with the finance committee's recommendation at this point, but we'll have another finance committee
Talk
meeting
about it
before the
Wednesday again.
next time the payroll warrant comes through.
This at least gets them out of deficit with our vote right now, and then
We'll-
they can
yeah,
just,
and we'll know what they'll have for pending invoices too, so if they say, hey, we just got a delivery, haven't got the invoice for it yet, we'll know that, it's gonna be a little higher.
Right.
I mean, I suppose that we can keep going, there's no reason to take a stab at it and try to get a final number, I mean, at any point, I mean, we wanna just
I just like to try
do
to
like we're
keep
talking
track
about.
on it.
Do an incremental increase, we know we know we're gonna go beyond it, we probably wanna make sure that any increase we do, we do go beyond, we don't wanna, last thing we wanna do is surplus fund that account and have money left at the end of the year, we wanna.
but you're not funding this, you're only allowing him to continue to deficit spend.
Oh, okay.
So if you fund.
What we're
if
trying
you
to do is
say-
squeeze
the
them and
number.
say,
If you say right now.
can you skip an hour of the plow running for an hour, in that. Truth is, it's all about public safety, so to say that is not really working either, but the idea is just just pay attention.
Be aware of your budget.
Don't scrape a dry road.
So, yeah, if you guys
That
vote,
type of concept.
if you guys voted right now $200,000, let's just say, that doesn't mean we have to find that money at the end. We only find what is deficit spent.
But yeah, right, let's.
But-
You just granted them the authorization.
Right.
Exactly, to go start running
But
overtime.
the Mass
so.
General Law requires the selectmen and the finance committee to allow the accountant to continue to deficit spend.
We just
So-
cap that incrementally to keep it close, so we're not just.
So I would make a
Whatever.
motion for tonight to increase the overtime by $16,349, which brings it to a new total of 40,000, and to increase the highway snow removal account
Has,
by 45,000, which brings it to 150,000. Both leave cushion for probably one more hit on the materials and maybe 2 more hits on the part-time before they have to come back and talk to us, assuming they haven't already done that since we last looked at the numbers.
so we have to approve the additional 16, or we have to approve the 40 over?
It's
No, we were
40.
talking about bringing it to a total
Yeah.
40. It was originally at like 26 or whatever
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
23,
So the 23's
the original line item in
original
the
line,
budget.
okay, so it's just a 16
So
over.
we're just
Yeah.
bringing it to 40, and it's
Okay.
the 16 that does that.
Okay, so we're
So-
talking about, we're gonna approve the amount total or the amount over, whichever way.
Yeah, either one or
Right.
the other.
Either
And
either.
so, exactly, so if you want, I'll clearly state it, just the new total
Thank
for
you.
overtime is 40,000, and the new total for highway snow removal is 150,000.
Much cleaner, I like it. Thank you. Second motion.
Okay, any further discussion? I think it's pretty clear. Call for a vote, those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And payment in lieu of taxes from the Insight Meditation Society.
Yeah, I don't see them here. I thought we
No.
had made arrangements. They confirmed they were coming, a couple weeks ago. It's up to you if you'd like to wait and see if they can come back, or if you just want.
Well, I think it would be appropriate,
Sure.
and one of the things that I guess I mentioned to Fay, and I don't think I mentioned it to you, Andrew, but I know I haven't mentioned it before, that maybe it would be good if we could recognize them at our annual town meeting by Pendago being represented Berthium in, and just to thank them, because they don't have to do this every year. I don't know what the board wishes were, just a quick ceremony before the actual meeting starts.
And Jason had commented before from DPW that often if they're looking to do something in town, they offer materials or offer supplies up.
Yes.
Such as, we had that dam issue up there on Gasson's Pond, and they volunteered the materials for it.
Right.
Once again, they don't have to, so they do.
They're doing a lot of little
They are
things.
I
They
think
a
it's
good-
definitely worth
They are a
They
very
are a
good
good-
raise.
raising the partnership that they have with the town.
Yep.
But I didn't know if we wanted to do it at town meeting when everybody's there, and maybe have a little ceremony before the meeting started.
I definitely think we want to acknowledge them. Yeah, if you're gonna do it formally, that might be a better avenue for public acknowledgement, or maybe we write something up, just send them a certificate or something.
Yeah.
Be formal, if we're gonna
We
do it,
usually
be
do
formal.
that.
be
Typically
formal with it.
invite them in.
Typically
and we're
invite them
scheduled to see
in
them
and-
tonight.
Right, but I'm saying, I mean, they do, I mean, they, obviously, the taxes is the donation to the taxes is nice, and they do other things as well, so, you know, more than a little lip service just to say, oh, thanks.
No, we have a certificate here,
That'd be,
prepared.
great,
Mhm.
excellent.
Okay.
So do you wanna table that until annual town meeting or our next regular meeting?
For this, I would suggest just the regular meeting, but the town meeting would be something I think a little bit more special and not just
Right.
about this year's donation. I think the town one is about the continual yearly donation, and then the other random donations they make throughout the year that almost nobody hears about unless they
They're improvements to
makes
the
it
water
through to a
line and
meeting
stuff.
like this.
And their own tank for suppression system. They went really out of their way to really help make that place safer fire-wise. And, you know, the donation materials, and Jason could probably cite 10 things if we ask them. They always are willing to help, so I think it's noteworthy.
Okay, so I guess we can do that at the annual, if I got that. Okay. If you could let them know that, okay, if they call,
Yep,
okay.
so not at the next meeting.
Well, for this, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine,
do
Okay.
this at this
Just-
meeting, but at the town meeting, maybe make it a
Okay.
little bit more of a,
formal.
Do something more formal.
Okay, yeah, that'd be fine. The street lighting discussion,
Yep.
Andrew?
So, I did a little homework as far as, looking to see what it would take to, upgrade our, our streetlights from the high-pressure sodium lights to the LEDs. And, there'd already been a little bit of legwork done, previously, but I had also talked with National Grid about what kind of options they have. And so we basically have kind of two different options if this is something that the board wanted to pursue. One of them would be to attack it from the green communities angle. And that would basically be that we'd have to get a grant from the state that we would own the streetlights at that, to basically buy out the streetlights and then basically purchase the new fixtures that go up there and then own the monitoring, the maintenance, all that forever. It would always be under us. So when they die, we have to pay for it. And the positive end of that is that it's, it's almost a $21,000 a year. It's savings over what we're paying right now. It's basically rent the lights. But National Grid is rolling out a replacement program right now. And basically, they would come in, they'd retain the ownership of the lights. It wouldn't be any different than how it is now. The only difference is that the fee for renting the lights would actually increase. So it almost offsets the amount that you save in kilowatt usage, but because they go from like a $10 per fixture rental to a $12.50 per fixture rental. So it still ends up being a savings estimated between $2,000 and $3,500 per year, but that depends on whichever power option you select. So, they allow for either they have a high power one or a low power one depending on the area. But I wanted to kind of put that to you guys to see kind of if you were interested in pursuing this any further, or if you had any comments, or I know Matt, you probably have more expertise in this than
I have
than
a question. The rental fee for the fixture, the monthly,
Yeah, yeah.
so it's $12.50 a month
Mm-hmm.
per LED fixture per month. The question I have with that, let me just do a quick little math here so I can throw the numbers out and see if I'm
Yeah.
making sense. So how much a year is that?
$12.50 per megawatt.
$150 a year about?
Per fixture.
Mm-hmm.
144, yeah. So yeah, 150 is a good even number.
And then you take the 150, say times 7 years, that's your cost of an LED fixture.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much to include installation, because they're not giving you the high-end LED fixture with all the controls, they're giving you an LED fixture.
Right.
That should last them, mind you, 15 years once they install it. So my question is, who said that we should have to pay them to put up a fixture they're never gonna have to revisit and then pay more than the HPS they have to replace every 5 years?
I would say Department of Public Utilities is probably.
Exactly. And I think this is one more reason we gotta go back to our state senator and our representatives and explain that the Department of Public Utilities does not appear to be performing in the interest of the constituents and the people that pay the bills, but more in the interest of the utility companies. This program does not in any way benefit us. It's just saying that National Grid will make more money on the fixture because they're making less money on the electrical usage. Yet the whole point of all of this is to reduce electrical usage. But they're trying to do it without reducing the cost for it. And so they've got themselves spinning in circles because they don't know how to fix themselves from saying, we need to spend less energy, but I can't give up any money to do it. And there's plenty of other things in this state and country where people are going to spend their electric. Streetlights is not where you got to be worried when people are buying more and more ACs, TVs that are much more kilowatts, and they're going to make their money. Streetlights is not where they make their money. So I would really like that we work towards something that says, hey, you're going to be charging us for something that is technically at this point almost mainstream in the industry. I don't even know if National Grid can buy high pressure sodium fixtures anymore. I think they're scrapping from every other yard and city that got rid of them just because they have no. I go into you go into your local hardware stores. How easy is it to find the old halogen bulbs? It's either LED or incandescent, but it's almost impossible to find some of the halogen bulbs I used to get because they're just not as efficient as LED. And so it's being phased right off the counter. So there's a part of me that's just, this still is better for us in the long run to move with that. If we had our own maintenance division or a regional electrician that could share the regional bucket truck and we could take care of our fixtures at our own, that would work. But the problem I find with a lot of that is that whole, we gotta buy their light and throw it away and then pay to get it thrown away because nobody wants the high pressure sodium fixtures anymore. So, but we gotta pay them for something they don't want. And then we gotta pay to get rid of it because they don't want it. And then we pay someone to install it. And then we upgrade their connection to it because until they visit it, they don't put in their fuse disconnects from the line. So now we got to pay someone to do the extra work to do that because they didn't update their system to their own standards by the time you bought them. So it's really, we got a pole, but all we get is ownership and you got all the cost in dealing with it. And I don't understand that concept when we pay maintenance through every other bill you pay. There's a standard maintenance on the line item as it is. So I don't appreciate this markup of $2.50 more when they're never going to have to come back and maintain it. So that $2.50 is not necessary. It's not justified. So I just think we really need to make that statement before we just say which way do we want to go. But I think for our town, obviously, paying National Grid to change them all and then just charge us $12.50 is the most fiscally responsible way to do it at the time. I just still get tired of.
It sounds like the.
Because you don't have many options because all you got is National Grid, then take it or leave it.
Sounds like the grant option would include having those installed, wouldn't it?
It would include having them installed with the green option. The only problem is,
We'd have to maintain.
yes,
And
so.
questions to
yeah.
this. What does a fixture actually cost to purchase if we had to replace one?
No, there's a lot
And what's
more
the
than
expected-
just that, because then
what-
there's all the paperwork for the license agreement and who is now the main contact in the city to talk about if a pole goes down, who takes the light off, who puts the light back up.
Right, like in the middle of the night, if a
It's an
car takes it
administrative
down.
thing that goes beyond the lights out, gotta fix it.
Yeah, like if
I'm
a
just
car-
saying there's,
If a
there's-
car takes a pole out, who's fixing it.
Well, what do they mean by fixture? Do they mean the
Well,
arm
what
from the
happens is
pole
they
out? Do
replace the
mean
pole and
light
then they
head?
tell you to go
The
replace your
But that's
fixture.
what I'm saying, our
They
fixture will
only
sit
own
on the
the pole.
ground, who's doing
No, your
that?
fixture
So-
will be destroyed. You will have to buy a new fixture then and then replace it.
Right, and that's okay, now you have to purchase a new fixture. What does a new fixture go
Mhm.
for? 15 years when they start burning out.
Since,
you're gonna
since
have to
I've
buy
been
one.
in the fire department,
Right.
I don't think we've had a single pole go down with a light on it.
Well, it's helpful that we only have like 195, 200 lights in this town of.
227.
Yeah,
Right.
but how-
So
so
close.
look at like during the ice storm, how many fixtures were actually
It's kind
ruined
of
during the
large
ice
wattage.
storm? They didn't have to report that to us, but I can tell you there was probably a lot that were destroyed during the ice storm, and that's like a,
Because of the type
Mass.
of fixture and in the nature of the ice storm, I guess. But the trees are cut back, that real risk to them doesn't exist. If you can save $21,000 a year, and these things are gonna last us 10 years, you're gonna save $210,000. How many, what does it cost to start replacing them, and how far does that 210 go towards replacing them? If you're gonna save $2,500 a year, you're gonna save $25,000 in 10 years. It's really a joke. It's not a significant amount of money. There's not really a big savings there for us.
No, the biggest,
I would
there's a
think of-
couple things that we get from it. Like if we just said National Grid replace them, we'll go with the 1250 a fixture, whatever. Is one, it also counts towards our energy reduction in our green communities, reducing your 20% or whatever commitment we made. So it helps there, and that's a huge drop
sure.
in relationship to this town's usage. Which just continues to help us get more of those green community grants. I mean, there's, so in other words, one kind of leads to potential more funds for other projects.
Is there potential that the grant that would allow us to get these done and installed, is there potential for a grant in the future for the maintenance of those, or for repair of some under
Probably
another
not.
grant?
Probably not.
No, it's one of those, it started off as an incentive program, like first you had to adopt the regulations, kind of like with the community compact program. Once you get enough people into it, they'll start just phasing the funds out, or when the next administration comes in, they'll have a new priority, and 10 years from now, you won't have the same program. So
By the time the cost of like complete replacement, say 15, 20 years down the road, they'll probably have some crystal that just soaks up the sun during the day and then re-emits it at night. I don't know. Some new technology
Or they'll
that
just put a
replaces
solar,
LED.
or they'll just put a solar panel on the top of it in an internal battery.
Well, there's another fun one from Groton. Do you know how Groton does their electricity? Groton Electric.
Yeah, I was just
The
wondering.
town runs their own utility. So whatever money people pay for electricity goes to the town.
So does
And,
Templeton.
and they have their own truck or trucks in a crew of, I don't know how many, but they do their own maintenance. So of course, when lines go down in ice storms and big storms, that puts them out busy with a lot of overtime. But when it comes down to having, services cut for a structure fire, it's done pretty quick in Groton, because you're not waiting for someone, or a car accident. The general service is much better for the utilities. Whether, I don't know, if you look into something like that, if those employees are strictly dedicated to that, or if they do other services in town, if they're like a dual-purpose employee. Because obviously, I don't think there's that much line work in a small town that they'd be busy all the time. But there must be, if we didn't want to go, Barry Electric, there must be a certification we can get for a worker to be able to do line work and replace those heads and not subcontract it.
I think the money would have to be some sort of an enterprise fund, though.
For
No,
fixture
I'm not talking
maintenance-
about taking
For
over.
fixture maintenance, your general electrician can do that.
So we could
You're
hire.
tapping into the 120 volt line, not the 13.8. So you're 10 feet below the high voltage on
So-
average on a pole, but some of the older towns, they're a little
So-
tighter, but
I would think maintaining these would be reasonable, and I would think the $21,000 a year savings would be wiser. We would probably go several years without touching that money. So we'd probably want to set some sort of capital account up to put some of that money aside towards intended future maintenance on those, just like you would, saving for a roof or something else.
A lot of towns actually also, they hire a contractor to do the maintenance on them.
Right, that's what
And
I'm
it could be
saying.
like a per fixture, a per diem, a per hour rate, so it's, I call you, you promise to respond within 24 hours, you pull a fixture, put up a fixture,
Right.
or if within your National Grid agreement, license agreement, there's shorter response times, you just need to make sure that's in the contract with the contractor you hire. I'm just throwing it out there.
Where we
or-
have a mutual agreement with the bucket truck that we're in joint ownership with, we would have the availability of a truck to allow an electrician to do the work for us in a timely manner as well. So we could probably look into the cost of having an electrician do the work for us. That $21,000 a year, you know, if you banked it for 10 years, like I said, it's $210,000. If you banked half of that towards a capital account earmarked for the light fixtures in town, we'd be able to start replacing them in the future as need be by keeping a funded capital account for that. And the rest of the money would be savings in the general fund.
I think the only thing with the bucket truck though is we get it it's a scheduled use. So I think we get it 4 weeks a year, and it's 2 weeks at a time, whenever those weeks are. It's not just, we can go get it whenever we want. It's a set schedule.
And if we had to, we could possibly look into borrowing that from a town or even borrowing the school's bucket. You know, Quabbin has a bucket truck. Did you know that, the high school? You know, there's a possible.
Regional shared services.
there's a
other
shared- there's
things
a
you can talk
possible-
to other towns.
And there's a possible shared service just with the school district. They have a
Well, that's
truck
what I
that's
meant, just-
rarely used probably down there, but they own one. I just think it's the pool of money, the savings to the town. If we took some of that savings and put it aside towards a capital account towards those lights. Let's say it's 21,000, we put 5,000 towards a capital account, let that accrue. In 5 years, it's $25,000. That can take care of repairs that come along if we need it. And the rest of it just is a reduction in our expenses. And as you said, it gets us in better standing with the green communities.
I would recommend, if you're, I know we're at that point, we just finished the last Green Communities grant. So we're at that.
That's what I'm looking at.
Now
you know,
to
let's-
reapply.
Yep.
This probably is the right thing to apply for. Get a total list,
I have all that stuff. ready
talk
go.
to a contractor to try to get some budget numbers so that we can build a good application. And I would probably immediately start talking with Scott Farrar because it's gonna go above his head to finalize that license.
I got a meeting scheduled with him tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I knew we were having this discussion today, so I said, depending on what you guys, you know, came up with was kind of how we're gonna attack it, so.
Yeah.
So in agreement then to move with look for the grant and replace them?
Yep.
Yeah,
Good.
I
So
believe
that'll be
that's
this
the
year's
right
Green
move.
Communities grant.
I think so too.
Application.
They don't need the $12.50 a fixture.
No, I don't think,
And
that's
it's an insult
throwing
to
money
do it
to the
them.
trash.
Right. They're making their money. They don't need that.
You guys wanna make a motion on that, or?
Do we need a motion at this point?
Just formal. You don't really need it. I know what the
You got
intent
the
of the board
gist of the
is.
board, what the board
Yeah.
wants?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have the
Get kind
feeling of
of
the
a
board.
final plan and then we can sit and say,
Okay.
okay, submit that application,
Yeah, this is
make
what
the
the,
step.
this is what the annual maintenance cost is going to be, here's what the annual savings cost is going to be.
Yeah.
Projected anyways, but.
One question, do we have any lighting in town that is underground fed that is still owned by National Grid? I only know of overhead lighting that's National Grid's. Did everything that go around the common that's underground go through a meter?
Yes,
Okay, so that's
cause
ours.
we pay a meter, we pay.
A meter rate for that?
Correct.
Right. I know that there's some high ones that are off right now in the middle of town. Those should come down,
The lights,
the lights themselves.
those lights should have come down already, yeah.
They should come down, but we can just leave them off. Cause
But-
if we take them down, National Grid don't want us to pay them for it.
But we're paying $10 a month to keep them.
I would take them down then. We don't need them. I think we turned them off
We have a list of
as a
active ones.
test to see how the
Yeah, I
common
think-
lighting worked,
I
but then
think
we
they
never
went-
went and said,
Yeah, they weren't
could we
removed when the common was finished, cause we weren't sure how the lighting was going to be.
You guys are
But I
happy?
I think the
believe-
test is passed.
I would say so, it's been a year.
Yeah. So when I talk to them tomorrow, I'll make sure that those on their priority to get those out there.
Yeah, and if I recall, there was a couple of them that Scott was having a hard time finding originally, cause he couldn't turn them off, and then he so just make sure he remembers
Yeah. He's got a
what
list of
numbers
inactives,
those were
so-
that he missed. It's not uncommon.
Sounds good.
Just one more follow-up on that, since people will be, listening to this. There were streetlights that were shut off at one point in time around town, here, there, and everywhere.
Quite a
Maybe
few.
the time for
Yes.
people to bring forward requests of ones that are on or off. Either way, there may be some people that say, you know what, this may not be an area for a streetlight, I don't want it coming in my house and it only really services me. But there may be other people that say, hey, this light was shut off and maybe I'd like it back on now.
Right, but those that were banned in great time, because the LED cost me so much less to run.
I'm just saying that this is the time
Whoa.
to try to get our list finalized of what we
We
have.
also gotta be careful of, some lights actually might be a residence build light on a utility pole that is assumed to be one of our streetlights, so that's one thing I would suggest we need to do, is we need to look at we need to check our own, what do we know about what we own? Well, pay for. Take a list of all the lights, get whatever information you can from National Grid to identify the pole, the address, whatever, so we can go out and verify that it actually is there, it's on the pole they say it's on, and then cross-reference quantities or whatever to bills to say, are we getting billed for what we should or shouldn't? In other words, do our own internal audit,
Okay. I have all theirs right here. Every
because
pole, every
it just happens.
street name, source type, pole use.
There were quite a few turned off,
Mhm.
as I recall,
There
all
was.
a whole bunch of intersections, as I
Yes.
recall. I can't remember when that was done, I wasn't here when it was done, but I remember
Did
it
that
was
to try to
pretty
save
con-
some money for a little
We
while, and
did,
we
yeah,
turned
I
it
think we
back
did that
on.
in like 2010 or 11, I
Yeah,
believe.
something like that.
I'm about to suggest we do it again, cause we're at 70% of that budget line item already, and we're not even 60% through the year, so
Yeah,
I don't
some
know
of
if
that-
it's rates, what it is.
No, some of that was actually, solar,
Yes, Rex?
yeah, the SREX a solar came on, it was supposed to come on earlier, and it didn't, it was supposed to come online in February, and it did not, and it did finally come on in June, so what they did is they went backwards. You'll see everybody that pays electricity, all of our accounts were affected that way. I'm saying DPW, Town Hall, Henry Woods Building, Senior Center, Library, streetlights, Felton Field.
So you're just saying National Grid didn't take their solar upcharge,
No,
and now they're
what
retroactively taking it back?
What
Not
basically
National
happened,
Grid.
this was Soltage, so when we got that we got two bills in
Oh,
August.
you're talking about the supplier
The
cost.
supply cost.
Correct.
So we got one bill that was like a heavy bill, and then it was a lighter one. Well, the heavy one was everything from February to August for the supply, or not, from February to July, and then the second one was just that July to August.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Now we're on
but they were
track.
dated as August bills, so they hit 18
Okay.
instead
Yep.
of going back to FY17.
Oh, I gotcha. All right then.
Yeah.
So that's why that's why you see that a lot of the accounts, specifically the streetlights, you say is 70%, that would be why. But it affected anyone that has electricity.
But overall, it should be lower.
Okay,
Yeah.
alrighty.
I'm hoping the savings balances it out at the end, you know what I mean? Even though we had to pay that February to June, I'm hoping the
Just
savings will
Kind
keep
of look at
us.
the 2-year total to see it.
Yeah, when I was looking at last
Averaging
year,
year to
they
year similarly, not.
Yeah.
Sure.
Last year had overexpended by about 3,000, so I thought that it was on track, but then they said, yeah, the Soltage bill was, oh yeah, that's right, we paid for that,
Mhm.
that big chunk.
Mhm.
And you're seeing on the
Substantial.
National Grid bill the deduction for supply
Yes.
or whatever
Yeah,
that.
it's
Unmarked negative that they just think you'll figure out.
Yeah, and we're getting,
We've been tracking
yeah,
them.
we're getting local revenue from the sale of SREX as well, quarterly, so.
Okay.
yeah.
Hey.
from the DPW building.
The solar on the DPW.
You're getting the SR sales quarterly?
I believe that is it,
I would review that. It's not necessarily wrong,
yeah.
but usually you get your best deal when you hold it to the very end. Because if you sell early, you usually don't get the minimum.
Oh, I think we get the quarterly report, but they sell it when the market
Okay,
is right.
so they sell
Right,
when they
yeah.
get the best price, okay.
Right, yeah, they,
Perfect, all right.
we
I
leave it
was-
to them to decide when to sell it, they just update us quarterly what our revenue is.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, we have some wage authorizations. We have for the police department, Kyle Casavant, part-time, 15:38 per hour. What is the wishes of the board?
These are all step increases, just so you're all aware.
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, that's,
Hmm?
I was gonna ask why that number would jump, but,
Yeah, they're, moving to step one, they're at their first year anniversary.
are all through the same step and the same?
Mhm.
Yep, they were all hired the same day.
Can we make one motion for all three of them?
If you-
I make a motion for all three to approve the recommended wage authorization provided by Chief Carbone.
Okay,
I second the
Second.
motion.
any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
They sure looked exactly the same.
I remember actually being on stage when they got inducted, whatever that ceremony is, when they got the hiring ceremony. They were, I think was that one of the first times the chief did like
That
that new
was-
hiring ceremony? Was the 3 part-timers?
No. Cause he did, his swearing in, and then Jim's.
So the sergeants came before the part-timers? I couldn't
believe
recall.
so, yeah. Oh, yes, yes.
Alright,
Mhm.
wasn't sure, just figured out. That was one big blur.
It all
A lot
is.
going on at that time.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, and these are just, the next two are kind of together in a way. We have a resignation of Stephanie Hardy from the Finance Committee.
Do you wanna read it, or?
I think you put it in a
I did.
pack.
Mhm.
Let me read the letter. As soon as I find it here, I just had it out. Thank you. And this is addressed to Ellen Glidden, Town Clerk. Please accept this letter as my formal resignation from the Finance Committee. Regrettably, due to family obligations, I'm no longer able to fulfill my responsibility as a Finance Committee member, and that's from Stephanie Hardy. And we'd like to thank Stephanie for her time of service with the town. And likewise, we received a notice that Kathy Howard, congratulations, I guess, been appointed to the Finance Committee.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Also
And-
wanted to just personally extend my thank you to Stephanie Hardy for also helping fill in for the Finance Committee. Last year, everybody's participation was appreciated, and she was another one that stepped up when we were trying to fulfill gaps in the Finance Committee while we were doing that budget through quite a period of transition, so.
Okay.
Now I'll wait to tell you thank you when you resign. Now it's just do the hard work. I'm just joking.
Okay, and we have a request to use the town property.
No, I'm
Nope.
gonna ask you to swipe that. I thought one was coming in and it never made it to
Okay.
me, for this
Well,
meeting,
we can
so
cer- we can
pass
certainly
over that.
deal with that one fairly quickly. And we have the common victualers licenses to renew. I don't know how the board wants to, these are all renewals, right?
Correct.
There's no new ones on here.
No.
One's new.
Which one? Ice House?
Yeah.
But they had a liquor license last year, and they've been in construction, as everybody knows, driving by Worcester Road.
Agreed.
Yeah, they're looking closer to opening, so that's why we're ready for their common victular license at this time.
Right, I was just saying they're new. I agree, but
Yeah, and there is one motor vehicle one on there, on the list. That came in. It's on the top.
is that new?
It's a renewal.
Oh, okay.
I actually, speaking of the motor vehicle licenses, I requested, because I don't see that we have any sort of regulations on the motor vehicle licenses, except for what the state states oversees this. So I asked one of our abutting towns to send me, they have like regulations that spell it out, and it's a little more defined. So I think in the future, once I have time to put that together, I'll bring that before you guys to review, so we can come up with something.
Okay.
Hmm.
If you'd like, I'll make a motion. I'll
Okay.
do one per general
Category?
category, so make a motion for the motor vehicle license class 2 for A and B marketing to approve that license.
Okay, do I have?
Second.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve all the following for in-holder common victualler licenses. The Jenkins Inn and Breakfast, Camp Coldbrook RV Resort, Berry Center for Buddhist Studies, Insight Meditation Society Retreat Center, Insight Meditation Society Forest Refuge, and Hartman's Herb Farm.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second, yes.
Okay. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to make a motion for approval of common victualler licenses. The following list includes Northeast Pizza, Berry Congregational Church, Stone Cow Brewery, J&J Family Restaurant, Berry Post No. 2 Building Association, Inc., Petrogas New England, DBA Honey Farms, LCJC Donuts, Inc., DBA Dunkin' Donuts, Cozy Cabin, Ice House Pub, Yummy Garden, Quabbin House of Pizza and Seafood, Picasso, Hartman's Herb Farm, Berry General Store, Marketplace on the Common, and Harmony Hill.
Okay.
Second the motion?
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, next.
Make a motion for entertainment license at the following locations to approve the issuance of a license for the following locations. Northeast Pizza, Stone Cow Brewery LLC, Hartman's Herb Farm, Dunkin' Donuts.
Second the motion?
Okay. Here, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. In favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Is Northeast Pizza and Dunkin' Donuts a renewal? Okay. Didn't know what type of entertainment they provide.
They have the TVs.
Yes,
That
all it
counts
is?
as entertainment?
Yep.
Yep.
Wow. That's what I was wondering, why those are there, but.
Good enough, okay.
Yep. And I'm actually in the process of finding out, some of these other places that have Keno to go. I believe Keno to go is considered entertainment now.
So the inn holders
Wow.
don't need to have it for entertainment?
No, unless they're providing some sort of entertainment.
I guess what he's saying is if in their lobby they have a TV, does that mean it's entertainment?
Yes.
And they have it in their rooms, and the Colebrook used to at least have bands and things, and
Colebrook gets an entertainment license.
it's just not on here.
Yeah, they haven't sent it back yet.
Okay. Just curious. Anything like simple, like I said, almost everyone has a TV someplace for public view. Strange that qualifies.
I don't think Insight Meditation has TVs, just so you
Oh, no, I don't think they do.
Never know.
I don't think they have much in the way of entertainment.
Well, some think it's entertainment.
Not that would be defined under these rules, probably.
Okay.
Correct.
But I would think all the other places have entertainment of some sort, even the Air Farm probably has musicians.
Or was it just in my packet? I was reading it. Okay.
We have a,
Finding them, telling them they gotta reply.
Well, that's what I was wondering if it was included in the in-holder, but if it's not, it would just have something.
Buried somewhere. Didn't want
we have
to
a letter from the State Lottery Commission, et cetera, Executive Director, informing us of that Marketplace on the Common on Moulton Street is planning to offer Keno, which I guess they'll be back in for an update here. Yeah, we're supposed to let them know, let the Lottery Commission know if we have any concerns about this or, opposition. I guess this is another one, we send a letter of
Yep.
opposition.
Yeah, if you
But not-
object to them having Keno, then we'll send them a letter.
Yeah,
I certainly don't.
I'm okay with it.
So no action required then?
No.
Okay.
Okay. We have a discussion on the transfer station, and we've got to discuss the meeting tomorrow night as well. I guess mostly dealing with the meeting tomorrow night, I guess, I would think. We've been invited by the Board of Health to go to their meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, and for a discussion on transfer station issues and some of the follow-up to discussion we've had with the vis-a-vis taking it over or whatever. And I don't know, do members have anything they want to add before we go in there and talk to them? Their meeting is here, right, in this room? Yeah,
At 6 o'clock.
at 6 o'clock, yeah, I knew that.
Do we have any sort of agenda for their meeting posted as to?
We've already posted it.
No, I mean, the specific things they want to discuss about it?
Discussion on transfer station, or on the transfer station agreement.
Did they have any specific requests from us?
Nothing that was brought to us. We
Okay.
just requested a meeting with you guys to discuss it.
Good.
We'd be, kind of like to find out, would have been nice to know what they plan to discuss, I mean, to prepare for answers or things.
My suggestion
that's what I
is,
mean by
it's
agenda,
so
Charles.
preliminary,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
it is, it's preliminary. We're searching for information to ensure that if it's something we wanna move forward with, it's viable and financially sound decision. I don't know if there's a lot more to add to that, other than we're asking questions, but maybe we can ask them questions to help fill in some of the blanks if they have regulatory things that we're unfamiliar with. But, or, I don't know.
And they're probably gonna wanna tell us that, this is somewhat under their domain to begin with. Board of Health and trash and so on, the landfill, and et cetera, all of that stuff, so, probably wanna know how our board and their board are gonna work together to get this, to look into the matter as to how we might proceed.
And we need to look into that. Something Matt brought up last time was the fact that, you can't be the one that's in charge of it and have the oversight on it at the same time. So it might be a good opportunity for this board to take control of the functioning of it, the running of it, and then they are the oversight, and we have that
Yeah,
relationship.
that could be too.
That relationship should exist that way, and if it doesn't now, that's just another positive point
Yeah.
to having another party run it, whether it's under our direction or another department's direction, however we decide to establish it. At least then we'd have a legitimate oversight, separate in a separate board, which I think we should have for that.
I mean, I think we need to approach it as like a partnership, and each person has each entity has their role, and
Right.
just figure out where that line is drawn. I mean, they have a great value to this town in a lot of ways, and we need to find that balance, because
Well, we're all here for the
we
town.
have a role that we should be playing as well, and I don't think we have been doing it. And so, for instance, I've been on the board for a year and a half and I have not met one person from Solid Waste Solutions. Yet, it's my understanding that each year they visit with the Board of Health and talk about their contract, talk about what they want to do with the site, which is fine, but as I perceive it, that talk should be, what do I have to do this at the site? And the Board of Health says, here are the steps, here are the rules, here's the requirements. And then Solid Waste Solutions would come to us saying,
Right.
this is what I know, this is what I want to do, this is what I think, and this is why I think it'd be good for Solid Waste Solutions and also good for the town. But it never came to us. And so there was a part where I think that we need to work together and figure out where we each sit at the table and find a way to be a partnership in it, you know, because I've come across really strongly before and I've got to work on that.
Just take after me, I come across very easygoing and everything.
I do understand.
I kept a straight face for that, see?
But anyway, I'm just saying, I think we can come to a balance here where we
Yeah,
can work
I think
together,
so, too.
that's all.
Of course.
As though-
I was just curious if there's anything specific they had in mind that we should brush up on, but we'll find out.
Actually, I hadn't heard a word. I was,
No, I haven't neither, I was just speculating.
Makes it more exciting.
I was just mentioning to Charlie earlier, I have exactly 20 minutes I can be at that meeting tomorrow because I have to be, I'm the district moderator for the Bondsville's special district meeting that starts at 7 o'clock, so it takes exactly 40 minutes to get from here to there.
hey, but at least for you,
So,
we'll hit your role in the
Yeah,
first 5
exactly.
minutes.
So
and let you
just
run, because you're a
FYI.
participant in the meeting.
yeah,
I said if really push came to shove, we could probably handle it anyway.
but I
We
still
couldn't
want
make
some,
it, but-
you know, I know there's some participation, so just making you guys aware going into it, I got
So
exactly 20 minutes.
you want to talk first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I also
if I
think
got
it's
something
more
to
of an
talk about-
outline discussion.
Yeah.
I think so too.
It's not something I think we should really get into any of the weeds on the details because we don't know them yet. It's more about pursuing the bigger picture. So it's kind of a big picture. Here's an outline what we think. If it takes more than an hour, we went beyond the benefit of the meeting.
I think you'll find when we get to the
don't
DPW
think
commission
it'll take
meeting next week,
Agreed
we'll
with that, I
have,
just meant.
we should have a good discussion at the DPW commission meeting next week on this. We
Mhm.
did make it out to Groton with, also with Joe Rogowski and Jason, so we spent a few hours out there at Groton. We talked to their representative with the DEP. They've given us a local representatives to deal with here, but we'll get into all that next week. We had a good visit out there, so.
Okay, and we have a discussion on the animal control. I asked that this be put on because we've gotten a few complaints about dogs and stuff, and I understand our animal control officer is laid up
Right.
and unable to work at this time. And what we are gonna do about that. You had a conversation with
Right.
Rutland.
Yep, I did talk with Margaret and Chief Monaco about, you know, kind of where does this stand, you know, because we can't just have people, you know, having their calls go unanswered. But they are actually working, they're bringing on another part-timer who's going to be a part-time animal control officer, but she's also a dispatcher for them. So when she's not the dispatcher, she's gonna be the animal control officer, so she's kind of always gonna have that role. She's like the main point person there now. So that's basically their interim plan until they can get a full-time position reestablished.
Are we talking about per diem hours as she's needed, or giving her set hours as well, or instead of?
I believe that they're set part-time hours.
I'd be more interested in per diem if they could do it, so she's available when the calls come in, rather than say, okay, we have the officer here to talk to at these times, maybe we need to have
Right,
a
I think
certain
she's still going to be available.
block.
She'll still be available at any time when it comes in. But they're also gonna have 2 additional kind of less senior part-timers that will also be able to respond when she's not available.
do we have much say in what they do with this, or are they strictly
We
done
don't,
this?
because
We
we're,
don't.
yeah,
But you might suggest that, I mean, because obviously they're gonna have to compensate her for calls that she's gonna do as well as the hours. I would think the office hours should be, I would hope minimal, I don't, they probably have a good idea of how often the calls come in
right.
and how, in what kind of hours they're gonna need for that.
And we have been meeting with them because they're working on some structure changes to the way that they're putting together the regional animal control program, because in its current format, it's basically a stipend, or not a stipended position that she was earning comp time, and they were running into some issues with, you know, comp time that she was saying that she was getting versus stuff that they could actually prove. So they're changing that model and going to an actual salary position of a animal control officer who's going to have structured time as, you know, office time, and then outside time that's built in for off main time calls.
Do we have the right under our agreement, or the legal power to authorize one of our officers to be a dog officer as well, if need be? In other words, could we appoint an officer to be our ACO if the need should arise? So if for some reason, which I know we've had some calls that haven't gone answered, could we designate an officer as our acting ACO in the regular duties, that they could go address this call in the daytime so it doesn't go unanswered?
You'd probably have to change the union agreement.
I would have that discussion with the chief, see
Yeah.
if he has any.
Could we empower the chief to be an ACO for us? Do you see what I'm saying? Some way to address it I mean, we don't want to take it away from Rutland at all, but to give ourselves a backup, if we could designate the chief, I think it's all we have to do, I believe, is designate him as an ACO officer for Barry. It just would give him the authority, if need be, to deal with an animal, because no officer has the right, or anyone, to shoot or have any action on an animal without that designation. And it's as simple as giving the designation, I believe, I'm not sure.
Whether or not there's a permitting, or there's a licensing aspect to it.
But that's what I mean, to find out what we need to do, if anything.
Quick question. Do you recall how many towns are currently under the animal control officer?
I think there's 5.
Yeah. They were looking at trying to bring in Hardwick into it as well to reduce the assessment, but I don't believe that they're
Actually,
moving
there
forward.
might be 4. Sorry.
Rutland, Barry,
Princeton,
Princeton.
and maybe Ocam?
No, Ocam has its own.
That's, yeah, so maybe that's it.
Well, I know
I was
that they
unsure
were,
about Ocam.
at the last public hearing, Laura thought they were bringing in New Braintree.
New Braintree's in.
Or she
She's
works
not-
for New Braintree under a different
Yeah, when I'm
funding
looking,
mechanism, different town,
New
something.
Braintree is in here.
but my concern is less of the, like I said, Rutland will have the office and the officer. They'll take care of the day-to-day, they'll take care of the complaints and the things you might go for barking dog or whatever. But there's gotta be extringent circumstances that come up that you're gonna really need someone quicker. Be it a dog attack or something like that especially, that you'd like to be able to deal with it and have the authority legally to deal with it in town, in an expedient manner. And then let the dog officer, the ACO from Rutland, pick it up with the procedures and paperwork after the fact. But I just wanna make sure if we do need to have an officer deal with something, that we make sure they're legally allowed to, and we don't get caught up in red tape later because we didn't give them permission or the designation to be the officer.
We can discuss that further with the chief and look into it for him. I don't have the answers for you right
That sound something we should ask him to look into? And
No, not to me, not at this time. Nobody within our department right now should be approached about anything.
No, I mean the chief himself. No, I wouldn't go to the employees.
Well, I kind of agree also, even the chief shouldn't. And the reason I say that is there'll be bound to be times where he's in conflict with his own position. Like he wanted to bring up a particular issue about a dog he had a concern with to an animal control officer to take the right steps.
Right.
he still needs to have an animal control officer, so he's kinda already doing that in a way, but all he can do is, I need an animal control officer. So all he's doing is putting it in a notebook anyway, which he's already doing, and waiting for someone to show up to then do something about it.
Right, and I mean,
Because he cannot take the
procedurally-
animal.
procedurally, I still want this to go
I
through
think.
Rutland in the ACO. I'm saying legally, I think before we could have somebody deal with an animal issue, if something came up, we just need somebody designated that can do it. The paperwork, the procedures,
It's a designation
processes we
more
may
than
want to
the
take up, you know.
Education?
Well, that's what I'm saying, to look into it.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying we look into it with the chief, see what he thinks, see if maybe there's way more to it than I think. Maybe there's not. Maybe you just say, you know, we're gonna make you the ACO for extringent circumstances, only in the event where the Rutland ACO is not available, and only to deal with an extringent circumstance. The day-to-day, the processes, the filings, the designations of dogs and pens, everything stays with the ACO, just for the extringent circumstances, so we're covered if something happens. That's the only thing I mean.
Let's do a little legwork to see if it's
See
necessary.
if-
Might
that's what I
already be
mean.
covered-
Are you
Might already be
agreeing?
covered under his chief powers.
Do you agree to see if it's viable? That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying. I'm not saying to make any action on it at this point, just.
Gotcha, okay.
Okay.
The only other thing I would add to this, just to look at maybe the long-term picture, this concept of growing an ACO district, that region, whatever that goes from Princeton, thought I've heard rumors of going out towards Sterling and then all the way to Hardwick, too long and thin.
That would rely on
Split
department
it.
ACOs.
Should we look at a second region that maybe Barry, New Braintree, Hardwick, we've already got our own, and see if there's a benefit there where it reduces some of the burden also on Rutland, because now they're not trying to carry as many hours to cover 3 other towns, so they may not feel like they gotta bring in a 4th to get the part-timer to cover all the towns that are now under the, so it might be just worth asking Rutland what their thought is on that. Similarly, as we're approaching the various potential IT concepts, and whether we can share services with the school district versus, if we can do that, then maybe the current relationships just need to be reviewed to see if they're better revisited in a different way.
My suggestion
That's all, just
comes
a-
from familiarity with it. My brother, who had done some police work, was a part-time officer in Shirley. They designated him in the ACO. So anything that came in for animal-related, they called him and he went. And he came in per diem for it. So he was just a regular officer, just academy trained. He had no special training that I know of for it. And they designated him their animal control officer for Shirley.
That might be an option. I don't know.
It just gives you that local option, like you said, especially as we spread thinner with the bureaucratic end and the office end of it, you know, filings and whatever, you know, when she comes to us to say, we'd like this dog to be dangerous, or whatever the deeming she's looking for, just looking at, you know, how people are keeping their animals and things like that. That thing's great in a district and done widespread, but when you come up to something, especially in a dog attack or some incident that's local, you need a quick response. And I think we need to look towards that possibility of designating somebody. Because if you call her, it's usually at least 20 minutes till she's gonna make it here. You've got to get a hold of her, find her, make sure she's available, and then she's gonna drive here from wherever she actually is. It may be here in town, it may be, you know, on the other side of New Braintree. We don't know, or the other side of Rutland.
Once you do that, though, Craig, do you have a list of what he can respond to and what they can't respond to?
We,
This year responds to birds, dogs, cats.
Wildlife.
well, what I think to say extringent, we're looking for something that has some sort of urgency or public danger involved. A bird, probably not the case.
It all depends
So,
who you speak to, too,
well,
also.
But that's stuff to be worked out if it's even feasible. We need to look into the feasibility, if it's something we can do. Maybe a chief isn't allowed to be the ACO, I don't even know.
The problem is that it gets out of control. You start out with the intention to do that, and the next thing, this person's gonna respond to everything.
I think these discussions also right now are just the gap
Yeah.
filler.
Right, no, but my intent, once again, is not to take away from the ACO officer that does the everything. It's just in the event that something happens, someone's like, my 4-year-old's getting mauled by the neighbor's pit bull or something, we gotta get there quickly with somebody. If someone says, oh, my neighbor's dog's barking all day, okay, we call Rutland, they'll get to it. It's,
There's they've provided us a list of their new SOPs, basically, of how they're going to be dispatching and what they'll be dispatching the ACO to. So I'll provide that to you
Was
guys.
that previously defined and they're redefining it, or was it just never
It
defined?
was just never defined.
Okay.
It was, hey, this involves an animal, no matter how, what it was, and she was getting called for it. A mouse in a pool. Call an exterminator, don't call it ACO.
well, right, and there's probably only
Yeah.
certain things, certain types of animals that are restricted that you can't, you know, like, if you think a dog's a rabid dog,
Right.
any officer doesn't have the legal authority to shoot a rabid dog. It's supposed to be the ACO or an environmental police officer. You can't deal with certain things legally without having ramifications. But I don't know if that applies to rabbits and birds and squirrels, or if it's just dogs, cats, and other domesticated animals that fall into
I'll
those
I'll
rules.
forward you guys those SOPs for you guys to look over, and I'll try to get some other answers about functions.
Thank you.
All right.
You know, they've come across bulls in the road. I remember the interesting article about how they determined it was a bull, remember? That when they looked underneath and
People used to think if they had horns, it was a bull.
yeah, but he looked underneath, the appropriate parts were
Yes,
there.
but sometimes
I didn't want to go
That'd
all
do
the
it.
way, but I had to. I remember that article, and you must have been just. Okay. Yeah, and just to let you know, the meeting for Stetson is Friday morning. I guess I will be going, and one member of the board, and police chief, and you're
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Not quite the way we wanted, but I think one thing I wanted for them to eventually come to this board and talk to us. Board, maybe we can come up with some guidelines or something. So. The city of Gardner has concerns about the Monty Tech School Committee and how they're contemplate changing the agreement, the regional district agreement, which I believe has to go to all the towns in the school district, just like Quabbin would be voted on. I don't know, I had mentioned it to Fay, and we talked a little bit about it earlier this afternoon. Maybe we ought to have our representative come in and discuss with us just what is going on here. I don't know if our interests and Gardner's are necessarily the same. And what changes are being contemplated, so I just want to make sure we're on the same page as Gardner. I have no problem, or maybe you could ask Gardner, Andrew, what they're intending to do,
Okay.
what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know
what
if
they-
that sounds reasonable.
What their concerns are, I mean, it's.
Yeah,
there's
their
nothing
concerns may not
specifically-
be in our interest.
Right.
Yeah, my bigger concern here was he didn't speak at all about the actual
Change.
district amendment that
What it
is
was.
being proposed.
Mhm.
Is it to just push it off to the other
They're
smaller
doing it
towns?
in a non-normal but not necessarily incorrect format or manner. It's a good question. I mean, I appreciate the
doesn't-
tease.
It doesn't really address if there's any real concerns on it, just that
Right.
there's,
They're
you know,
not doing it like
the-
they've done it before.
you know,
Is it pretty much what it said? Is that how you read it?
very vague.
Okay.
No, I read it.
Very
Okay.
politically worded.
And do you have anything you wanted to, you got your public safety bill, yours, I
Yeah.
mean our public safety building.
Yeah, so February 15th right now is the scheduled go live date. That's when Verizon is scheduled to port the number from down here to over there. So the phones will stop ringing here, and they're gonna start ringing there, so we better be ready for it. But everything else is, I copied you guys on the status of kind of where everything is, you know, as far as the systems going. We're just kind of like in final 90% punch-out mode on pretty much everything at this point. So should go smooth.
Kind of an off-the-wall possibility, but I'm sure we have a specific list of phone numbers for the police that are getting bumped there, and we're not gonna lose all of our phone service here from some
No,
silly
no,
mistake.
they
That
have-
would be-
The
That would
the
be
numbers
bad.
the numbers have been identified, I
Okay.
signed off on them.
Okay, I feel better now.
Yeah, it was, these are the
I can
numbers
see the
that-
nightmare scenario,
Okay.
everything goes dead here, you know?
And, everything's on the way.
Do board members have anything they want to bring up, or?
I have just one thing I'd like to bring up. This is just so I can get it out there. I still gotta file the right paperwork. It's not a big deal, I think. But we did have a member of the DPW department have an accident. He injured his legs pretty bad, and there's been a GoFundMe page out there. And I did make a donation. I made the donation with my understanding of the limits of our conflict of interest law. I'm going to just be calling the Attorney General to make sure I use the right forms and properly file it with the clerk, etc. But I just want it known that I did it, and I did it personally, just because I think these things require help from the community when things like that happen to someone that works closely with the community. So I just wanted to at least get it out there so people know that I did it and that I'm telling you that I did it. So
Okay.
there you go. And I will get the right information from the Attorney General and file the right paperwork with the clerk and potentially our board as well. I forget how that goes, whether I gotta do it before both or what, but at least verbally I'm doing it now, and I'll figure out how to do it later.
Okay.
I don't think there should be a concern for conflict of interest that you've made a donation to someone on a FundMe page, employee or not. It's not working against him or working against the town or working against any other conflicting interest, it's just helping somebody.
I'm in
So
a different position. I'm up for re-election this year, so.
Understood.
It could look like I'm trying to buy the whole DPW department or any, I don't know. So I'm just letting you know I did it.
No, the dude's got a messed up
but
leg.
I'm not gonna hide it. You know, I did it. I
Yeah.
still think it was the right thing to do, but that doesn't change the fact that I should just
It's worth a
not
phone
hide
call
it.
to the,
That's all.
Fair enough, fair enough. I just wanted to
So I don't
assure you-
disagree. It
wanna
may
assure
not
you I have
matter.
no
They may
concerns
say it
for
doesn't
I
matter
don't
because I
neither.
did it within the limits.
I haven't
But
donated to his page
perception's
yet.
one thing
I
versus
probably
reality,
will.
so let's just get it out there.
I'm likely to donate to his page, but I'm likely not to file anything because I don't see any conflict if I make a small donation.
Yeah.
But I haven't yet.
Okay. Do you have anything you want brought up?
Just as I touched upon, we had the meeting with Groton about the transfer station. We got a chance to look at how they've set it up, the progressions they did to get where they are, got some recommendations for how we might set things up and why. DEP contacts, grants that are possible. There's a filing that's already going through. Who's gonna write that for? Gosh. The initial grant numbers she's gonna send out.
Andrea?
Andrea's gonna apparently send those out, but there's a deadline of February 15th that would get us the ability to apply for grants if we see fit and take the transfer station over to help fund things for there. That was one of the recommendations that Groton suggested we move forward with, at least send in some preliminary numbers on what we do for recycling stuff that Andrea's gonna fill out. They've, I guess, talked to her already on it.
Who's they?
The DEP, I think it was. I don't have the name offhand.
Yeah, she does recycling grants every year. I think, currently the recycling grant that we're using down there is the mattress grant. There's a bin down there for mattresses. That was something that Andrea
Right.
was able to obtain.
You can get containers, you can get a lot of different things from the grant. So what she's gotta do now is a preliminary numbers and things that are due, so that we can decide what grants we wanna apply for in June.
Well, I think
when
this
they
is a
come
good
out.
idea why you guys are gonna meet with the Board of Health, because
Right.
it seems you guys are on one page, nobody's discussed anything with the Board of Health, but the DPW's discussing it, it's kind of all over the place.
All
I
I'm
think it's
doing,
really good that there's a
Faye, all I'm
meeting
doing is giving the
tomorrow.
board an update right now as to
Yeah.
what took place in our meeting. So they informed us about that grant to pick in the deadline to file. And then they followed up via email to inform us, those of us that went out there, that Andrea's already filling out that paperwork and we'll file it. So that just means that there are grants that are available coming out in June. So if we did decide to move forward with taking over the running of the transfer station, we could look into different types of grants. Other than looking for a container, we could look for a packer. Groton, I guess, last year got like something in the neighborhood of $60,000 and built a structure with that money that houses their paper compactor. But the bundlers, they started with one bundler, so it's not like you have to get one for paper, one for metal, one for plastic. One bundler will do everything. You just have to go through the process of changing your material when you do it out. But we got a lot of good information, and the plan is to discuss it a little further at the DPW meeting. Jason said it'll be on the agenda for that next week, so we can get into it a little more and share a lot more fully the information we got. But it looks good, so.
Okay. With that, Bay, did you have anything?
I do not.
Anybody else have anything they wish to bring up? With that, I've come to the end of the meeting, and I look for the appropriate motion.
Motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Okay, in favor? Thank you.
Aye.